Hello and welcome to this week's Dream Deals, the show that acts as the home shopping network for millionaires everywhere. But if, like me, you're waiting for your 6 numbers to come up, well, don't worry, because we've got lots of practical advice on getting your hands on a used classic. Now, for this week's show, we've come to the working man's Las Vegas, a place renowned for its kiss-me-quick hats and its je ne sais quoi, I don't know. Now, in Blackpool, there is a company that offers style and performance and Britishness by the shed load. Who are we talking about? Well, Blackpool and TVR.
TVR was created in 1947 by Trevor Wilkinson. The name, as some of you will already know, derives from Wilkinson's first name, Trevor, TVR, Trevor. See what I did there? The first hand-built car rolled off the production line in the same year, but it wasn't until 1957 that the first true production run began, with a car that was dubbed Jomar. The reason for this perhaps unusual, some say ridiculous name, was that it was named after the children of the man who helped design and test the car, American Ray Seidel, who incidentally became the first TVR dealer.
Like most companies, TVR have had good times and bad times, and as a result have had more owners than the Queen Vic. But despite its swap shop history, over the years since 1970, TVR have remained loyal to its base here in Bristol Avenue, Blackpool.
Now, you might think that the curvaceous lines of current TVRs like the Tuscan and Tamora are a fairly recent design direction for the company, but you'd be wrong. Believe it or not, TVR started out curvy. In fact, in 1971, TVR launched the M Series.
A lot of these models now are getting on in the years. A lot have had the chassis replaced, which is quite a big job. So if you're going to buy one, you want to go for one that's had the majority of the work done, and maybe just the cosmetics left to finish.
This 3000M was the top of the range. Power came from a 142 brake horsepower Ford 3-litre V6 engine. Performance was more than adequate, with a top speed of 120 miles per hour and a 0 to 60 time of 7.4 seconds.
You know, when they're 25, 30 years old, a lot of the bodywork goes crazed. You get star cracking appearing on the edge of the bonnets and that. It costs a lot of money to rectify the bodywork, so you want to go for the best body that you can find. All the other pieces on the car are easy, you can buy them easily. Even the windscreen's off a Consul Granada, the door handles are off a Cortina. Nothing is a major problem. The chassis, you can buy a new chassis for £1,000.
Eventually, after 650 cars were built, the M Series, like all its predecessors, finally succumbed to time and fashion. Despite still being relatively stylish, the M was soon to be replaced.
It was decided in the late 1970s by the then owner Martin Lilly that TVR needed a car for the 80s, a car that said, "I'm an individual, look at me." And they came up with this, the TVR Tasmin, a car that's the Club Tropicana of cars, a car that comes with a dyed blonde mullet.
The Tasmin was an all-new car. Ex-Lotus designer Oliver Winterbottom designed the body, while the chassis and running gear was the work of another ex-Lotus engineer, Ian Jones. Production started in 1980 and ran until 1985. In total, there were 5 models ranging from the 101 brake horsepower convertible up to the 190 brake V8 convertible.
In many ways, the Tasmin summed up TVR at this time. They were a company trying to break away from their past and create truly distinctive cars, and this they achieved, all but coining the phrase the Wedge based on the Tasmin's shape. The only problem was it looked like a TR7 and had more borrowed parts than Steptoe's wheelbarrow. Having said all of that, if you want a car that's distinctive and pokey and great as a second-hand sports car, then the Tasmin is probably the car for you. And don't worry about spare parts, the TVR Fan and Owners Club is more popular than Robbie Williams. So, who better to give us a guide on buying a used Tasmin? Of course, it's Ian Royal.
With some Tasmin models being over 20 years old now, there's more than an average chance that the car has been restored. If this is the case, make sure you check trim fit, paint resprays, engine rebuilds and of course corrosion. But if you have to fork out any cash, are they expensive to repair?
No, it's not expensive to repair at all. A lot of the work you can do yourself. It's quite a user-friendly car. There's no tricky electronics to work with. Although it is injection, it's a mechanical fuel injection rather than the later electronic fuel injection. You could, in theory, take it to any of your local garages, although I would probably recommend you don't do that. Take it to someone who does know a little bit more about TVRs and the differences, the things that make them a little bit different to your usual run-of-the-mill car.
Although Tasmins are relatively old, there are still plenty of models around, many of which have been lovingly cared for. We've seen a 1982 28i convertible for £3,800 and a 1985 coupe for £3,700.
I've had the car for just coming up to 12 months now. I paid just short of £3,000 for it. Quite apart from the price of the car, I think I just like the aggressive look of the car, and from certain angles I think it looks absolutely marvellous. It looks brilliant, it really does.
But before you buy anything, remember, as with any car, make sure that you check the vehicle history via receipts and the service book. And finally, get the car checked out by a specialist, as it will save you money in the long run.
Now, during the 1980s, the TVR Tasmin was a hugely successful car for the company and firmly established them on the sports car map of Britain. And the TVR Tasmin had many guises, a 4 litre, 3.5 litre and this beautiful 2.8. But along with the shoulder pads in Dynasty, it was gone. So 80s. There was a sea change in Blackpool and TVR at the time. Peter Wheeler took over the company and out went the Wedges and in came the smooth lines of this, the beautiful Griffith. The prototype was introduced in 1990 and 2 years later the first car rolled off the production lines.
Visually, the Griffith brought TVR kicking and screaming into the 90s. Out went the sharp, angular lines of the 80s and in came the smoothness of the 90s. But although the car looked more pleasing to the eye, underneath it was still as aggressive and hungry as ever.
Performance, well, that was seat wetting. At launch it came with a 4 litre 240 brake engine, then a 4.3 litre 280 brake horsepower engine. The 4.3 would go from 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds. It was faster than a Ferrari Testarossa. Not bad for something built by the sea.
In total, the Griffith was a huge success for TVR, the last evolution coming in 1993 with the launch of the 340 brake Griffith 500. But despite its relatively short life, the car had brought TVR back into the limelight and set the shape of the company's future.
Now, I can't think of any car that offers as many thrills per pound as the TVR. And because of the Griffith's success, there are lots of them around. But like any specialist sports car, there are things you need to look out for. So here's Ian again with our lowdown on buying a used Griffith.
The Griffith's success is as much down to its performance as well as its affordability. If you are considering becoming a member of the Specialist Sports Car Club for the first time, what are the things you should be looking out for on a second-hand Griffith?
If you're thinking of purchasing a Griffith second-hand, there's a number of things you've got to watch out for. The first is the interior. Make sure the car's not a leaker. And by that, go into the car, feel for damp patches, and if there's a musty smell, then it's going to be a poor purchase. The car will have leaked and it'll have water in it. The second thing to look out for is start the car up and look at the exhaust smoke. It should be clean with no black smoke and no oil in it. That's a good sign that the engine's in good condition. Oil pressure should be about 30 to 40 psi and when the engine's revving, and about 10 psi at tick over. Another tip on the engine is leave the engine running. Make sure both cooling fans come on. If they don't, then there's a problem with the cooling system.
The Griffith is without doubt one of the most popular TVRs, so there are plenty of models around. However, we would recommend the later models as they were fitted with new engines and gearboxes. In terms of prices, well, you can expect to pay just under £13,000 for a 1994 model or £15,500 for a 1997 Griffith.
I paid £15,000. Brand new, they're about £38,000. It's not that expensive to run at all. It's probably cost me about £500 this year, and that was for a 60,000 mile service at the factory.
For all the success of the Griffith, TVR still wanted a car that was less aggressive and more accessible to drivers. So in 1993 they unveiled a car that was to form the basis of their entire range to date, the beautiful Chimera.
Although to look at, the Chimera was much more rounded and stylish than the Griffith, it still had TVR's aggressive stance. As well it should, really, because, after all, despite being a completely new body, the Chimera relied upon both the chassis and the engines from the Griffith. The only real difference was that the Chimera had a softer spring setup.
One of the beautiful features of the Chimera is its devotion to aerodynamics. Gone are any protruding door handles or fuel filler caps. In fact, it once featured on the Krypton Factor in an aptitude test. Contestants had to find everything. But by hiding everything, TVR have created a pure, organic, sleek sports car. Now, with an entry price of just over £35,000 to join the TVR experience, you have to say, well, is it worth it? The Tamora is only £600 more. That's all for part one, but join us in part two when I'll be getting my hands on the new TVR that have got BMW and Porsche quaking in the boots, the Tamora, and we'll be taking a look into TVR's future with the all-new T350. See you in a couple of minutes. Hello and welcome back to part two of Dream Deals. Now this week we're in glorious, boiling hot Blackpool, as you can see, taking a look at one of Britain's best loved car manufacturers, TVR. Now later in the show I'm going to be test driving the new Tamora, and we'll be taking a look at the car that caused such a stir at last year's British Motor Show, the T350. But first, let's continue our walk down TVR memory lane. Built at the beginning of the 21st century, the Tuscan, the Buck Rogers of cars, was, in the words of TVR, the most important car they've ever made. In the past, TVR could be accused of making pure driver's cars, blistering performance and handling, but lacking the finesse of other marques. Well, with the Tuscan, TVR, that's all going to change. They reckon it's a car for all occasions.
At first glance, you might think that TVR had got their new philosophy all wrong, but trust me, I'm a TV presenter. Look again. It might well be the boldest and brashest thing you've ever seen, with bullet hole front lights, massive air intakes and 18-inch spider leg alloys, but it is in fact, if you can say this, a practical sports car.
As strange as that might sound, it's true. Under that bonnet, they've deployed a straight 6 instead of a V8, the classic TVR engine, thus creating enough space in the front footwells for a tower clown. Improving the pedal layout, essential in any true sports car, shoving the catalytic converters forward, thus improving emissions. Prices for a new TVR Tuscan start at just under £40,000, and although reasonable for the amount of car you're getting, it's still beyond the range of mere mortals like you and me. So before you start crying, here's Ian Royal with a guide on how you too can be an owner of a TVR Tuscan.
There's no doubt that the Tuscan is a highly desirable car. Just one look tells you that. But what's your favourite aspect of the car?
Favourite aspect of the car has got to be the performance and also really the performance you get for the price of the car. The kind of performance you can expect is comparable to a Ferrari and really a fraction of the cost to purchase the car and to keep it running on the road. I think one of the particular aspects I like about the car is the interior, that it's very, very unusual in its appearance, but everything's there control-wise and as ergonomic really as any other car you can find on the road.
Because the Tuscan has only been out for a few years, prices aren't that cheap. A model year 2000 Tuscan S will set you back just under £40,000, while a W-regged convertible would cost about £26,000. The reason for such high prices is, of course, high demand. This is great news if you're selling, but not if you're buying. If you want to find a cheap second-hand model, you will have to wait a while.
TVR, being a TVR, is a specialist car and it's obviously a very high performance car, and I think it's very important to keep a full TVR service history on it, both for your own peace of mind and for when reselling the vehicle. The service intervals on this particular model are every 6,000 miles and you can expect to pay in the region of £550–600 for a full comprehensive service.
Finally, as the Tuscan offers amazing performance, there is the chance that second-hand models might have been used for track days. So when you're buying, make sure you check for accident damage, worn tyres, fading brakes and chipped paintwork. Because if you don't, the smile you wear when you first buy will soon be wiped off.
Now, motoring journalists like me are often criticised and even ridiculed for drawing comparisons between cars and women. You know the kind of thing, slip the baby into third, let's see what it can do, and I gave it a right seeing to. Thoroughly naff, quite predictable and sexist. So today, in the interest of political correctness, originality and equality, I'm going to be drawing comparisons between cars and men. Wish me luck. See, if men were cars, this is pretty much how it would be. Ferraris, sophisticated, highly strung, prone to the odd tantrum, men. Porsches, athletic, powerful, men, but lacking in a sense of humour. And TVRs, common, grotesque, ropey around the edges, but without doubt the most fun to be with, men. And if this TVR Tamora was a man, it'd have a great big fat ass. Well, all right, that's maybe a little harsh, but you have to agree that the rear is not the best view of this car, which is a shame because with the kind of performance this car offers, it's the view most other people will get of it. The interior of the car is much less intimidating. In fact, it's really quite pleasant. Note the usual TVR wave, getting inside the doors. Yeah, no, the inside, it really is very beautiful with these lovely brushed aluminium buttons controlling all of the switchgear. The beautiful use of this blue, and I would never have thought that blue leather, but it really works in this silver car, and of course all the Alcantara over the seats, and this short stubby gear lever to hand. It really is a beautiful driving position. And believe it or not, that is the button for opening the door. The styling is, well, it's retro, modern and futuristic all at the same time. It's a stunning use of materials. However, you have to say the build quality is the usual TVR averageness. But you pay your money, you take your choice. If you want something that has clunky doors, buy a Porsche. I'm quite happy in this. Now, driving TVRs for me have always been like getting on a roller coaster, which is quite apt as the cars are made in Blackpool, because you know that you're in for a white knuckle ride. You know that at the end of it you're going to want to get back on again because you enjoyed it so much. It's just the bits in between that are quite scary. Now the reasons for my fear, well, there's the lack of driver aids, the composite body, and the mind-blowing, or should that be bottom-blowing performance. It really is, as my mum would say, unnecessary. It'll go from 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. It'll reach 100 in just over 9 seconds. And a top whack, depending on who you believe, is somewhere like 160 to 175 miles per hour. Now the handling and overall ride of the car is really outstanding. It's not so firm as to be uncomfortable, and yet just right so that you can feel the car through the steering wheel and through the throttle. You can feel the road there all the time. You can imagine the two departments at TVR, can't you? The design department in their hand-stitched suits, the right shoes and the latest Mercury Prize for Music CD on the stereo. Then there's the engineering department. It's got a big engine, son, it'll go like the clappers. Yes, but what about ABS? What are you, soft? Traction control? That's what you're right foot's for, son. Get it in and drive it, and don't be scared. Well, I am scared, very scared. Now you see, as I see it, there are two problems with this TVR Tamora and TVRs in general. The first is the snobbery value, the fact that it's made in Blackpool and the build quality isn't so good. But nobody bangs on about Aston Martin being made in Newport Pagnell. And the second is the lack of driver aids. It is a white knuckle roller coaster of a drive. Having said that, it is the kind of roller coaster that you want to get back on again. Now, if this car was a man, now, in recent years, TVR have brought us some of the most memorable cars on the British market. And to see if that trend is set to continue, we've wandered up from the promenade here to TVR's factory, and look what we've found. The beautiful new T350.
Unveiled at last year's International Motor Show in Birmingham, the new T350 is a brand new coupe based on the running gear of the Tamora. Designed to be used as either a coupe or a targa-topped monster, the T350 is also going to be used as the basis for a new GT Cup class of the British Championship.
Now, in order to achieve success on the track, TVR have made the T350 a streamlined masterpiece, and underneath that beautifully smooth bonnet is TVR's 350 brake horsepower Speed 6 engine, already a huge hit in the GT Championships. As we move around to the rear of the car, you'll be forgiven for thinking that, hey, one night the designer was 10 minutes late for footballers' wives and drew a straight line right through the design. But you couldn't be further from the truth, because the sharply cut off tail drastically reduces the car's drag, and with the help of the diffuser underneath the exhaust, increases the car's overall downforce.
Inside, the T350 carries on with TVR's trend of mixing function and style. Again, using the Tamora as a basis, the T350 goes one step further and offers a sports pack. This option gives extra stats, such as lap times. Very handy for those track days.
Now, there is no doubt that visually the T350 is a stunning car, and I hope, I'm sure it'll live up to the reputation of its predecessors. But there is one nagging question that remains with me with this car, and that is, when do I get to have a drive of it? Sadly, that's all of your dream deals for this week, but join us at the same time next week when we'll be going all Italiano and looking at the legend that is Ferrari. We'll see you next time.